What's up, y'all? Welcome to the region where we talk about politics, techie stuff, mental health, and have a little bit of fun and just whatever comes up. I saw a video. I wasn't even looking. I wasn't even doom scrolling. I swear to God. I was just checking to see what my friends were saying. And this video came up, and it was a dude and a guy with a camera, obviously, videotaping people at a food bank lineup, like mega people, like MAGA people. They know they fucked up the election stuff, but these two fuckheads, pardon my language, just went down there and, for lack of a better word, just took their election a voting choice and rub their face in their own piss as they're standing in front of a food bank trying to get food. That is fucking unacceptable. That is unacceptable. They are not your enemy. Your enemy is the billionaires and the government officials and the media pundits that lick their taint. Not the working class. Not the working class. If you want to win this class war, and that's what we're in, you make no mistake about it. If you want to win this class war, you have to find a way to show them the way. Show them how to liberate themselves and everybody around them. Because as an internationalist, as a socialist, we know that no one's free until we're all free. So this bickering and you know what, if you're upset about Trump winning and that these people were part of the reason why, just go and process it somewhere else and come back, because you have to understand that these people they've been duped into believing that Donald Trump was going to solve everything. He was going to drain the swamp, right? And the only reason they would listen to a crazy man like that is because the Democratic Party has failed them so abhorrently. That electorate was the Democratic Party's to lose. Look at the talent they have. Joe Biden, Elizabeth, whatever the hell her name is. The only one that was actually even half decent was Bernie Sanders, but he was too radical. So they would rather have Trump be elected than Bernie Sanders, is what the message underneath is. And Bernie Sanders can make whatever choice he wants. He didn't want to become independent. He didn't want to be the next Ralph Nader. Although I would argue that Ralph Nader, he did some really great things. That is where we're at. This is not like, you can't just, people make mistakes, but you don't shame them for making those mistakes. You integrate them into your movement if you're serious about change. If you just want to gripe and moan and get likes and get fucking social points or whatever, then go do that stupid crap. But if you're playing for real, you are working against yourself. So that's my rant. I figured that instead of just chewing out these people, I would do this video, and I don't know how I even my feed is broken. I don't know what the hell happened, but anyways, this woman here, or my algo is broken. So this young lady here is going to talk about her experience of leaving MAGA, and I think for people who have never been in a reactionary position, they have a lot to learn about this sort of thing. I can speak for myself. I in my early 20s I was a socialist until I felt like I wasn't good enough to be like part of the clique and I left. I'm not going to get into the details. And then I became reactionary for like 10 years myself until I realized that that wasn't the way to go and I came back again. You know, people like if again I mean, like obviously, I'm saying this from like my own experience. My own experience is kind of painting how I picture this stuff. But it's fucking real, man. It's real, and you know, I didn't. I could. My life could have been a lot better not having gone down that road for so long. So, anyways, this is where we're at now, and life's a learning process. You try this, you try that, you try this, you try that. You finally, and then you think you're there, and then you move somewhere else. But anyways, let's see what this young woman has to say.
This summer, I took a little video of myself attending a Democratic town hall. Now, this was the first Democratic event that I've ever attended in my entire life, and I just turned 51 years old a couple of weeks ago. And the reason it's my first Democratic event is that I was a hardcore Republican for the first 49 years of my life. So I took this little video. I went to see a couple of politicians, including our local mayor and Gabby Gifford, who I've always had so much respect for, her husband Mark Kelly, and Cory Booker. And it's funny because politics is not something that I normally talk about on my channel at all. But I decided to post this video one day and talk about my journey out of Christian nationalism, white supremacy, Mormonism, and MAGA, and my visit to the Democratic Town Hall, thinking that not a single person in the world would care. In fact, I expected to get maybe 50 views on that video, again, because it's not my normal topic of conversation. And I didn't realize that leaving MAGA was even a thing. And then I woke up the next morning and realized that it was a thing. And you guys, I really...
So that's it, right? She's telling it right there. Like, people are realizing that they made the wrong choice, and they're going to course correct. Here's the problem. Here's the problem. One problem that I see. The Republicans are going to do whatever. They're going to scorch earth for the next, like, 3 years. People are going to be fed up with it. And then the Democratic Party is going to come in. And they're just going to limp along with, like, these reforms that they say they're going to do and they're never going to do because the billionaires bought them out. Then, when the people are sick and tired of that, they're going to go back to the Republican Party. It's the same thing over and over and over and over again. It happens in the States, happens in Canada, seems like it happens in the UK. And the reason is because none of these political parties are addressing the core issues. And that's where movements, I think, need to happen. We talk about like the 9 to 5, right? Like, it wasn't 9 to 5 100 years ago. That was fought for. A politician didn't wake up one day and say, hey, you know what? I think we should give these guys a good work-life balance. People did that. People like you and me did that. And then nothing's going to change until we force people to make that change. Thankfully, there are some movements in that direction, i.e. Zoran Mondani. But he's going to have like his own issues on the horizon, being in the position that he's in, because they're ruthless. The ruling class is ruthless. So, that's it for now.
I only realized it was a thing because of the number of views. And then I went through YouTube and also Googled ex-MAGA, people leaving MAGA, and realized that that's a talking point that people actually are interested in. So here we are. So I spent the rest of the summer talking about my journey out of my huge alt-right Mormon prepper community that was full of a lot of hate and fear and just mindless obedience to the leaders. My journey out of Christian nationalism, white supremacy, and how I've come to be over here on the other side. And as I share my journey, I get a lot of questions. And obviously the biggest question on everybody's minds is, what made me leave? How did I get to the other side? And I think one of the big reasons you guys asked me that is that you have somebody in your life that
This is a caveat thing, right? Like, obviously, um, like a religious cult that like isolates people completely from the rest of society is going to breed this kind of stuff, and it kind of makes you think like a lot of this, like Christian fascist things that are kind of happening now. That how much of it is really like Mormon driven? Because like Mormonism is like a particularly pernicious religion, right? Like not all religions are bad, right? Like it really depends on the application. And I do think I think my experience is that human beings require spirituality in some capacity whatsoever. I know myself, I do. Like I meditate once a day, right? People need to get in touch with a greater power because the alternative is what we have been going through, which is hyper individualism, where the only thing that matters is the self. And if you look at like things, if you like talk to like moderate Christian folks, they would call that Satanism, right? And if you look at what Satanists were like back in like the late 20th century, it was all about like I'm God, right? I am the God. So it's funny how like the religion of Satanism kind of like links up with the political ideology of the day. And I don't think it's like I'm not talking about like some Bohemian Grove horse shit. I'm just saying that there is kind of like this similarity here where and that's the thing. That's like that's the constant problem here. We have like this like group hive mind thing, which George Carlin, God bless his soul, would critique for a really long time, and then you have the hyper individualist piece where the only thing that matters is yourself, and the whole community can rot, but you rot on the inside. So there's kind of has to be some kind of balance, and I don't really know the answer to that. But anyways, I digress.
has fallen into that crowd, and you're wondering if there's hope for you, and if so, how you can encourage them to wake up and see the light. And maybe you don't have any MAGA people in your life, but you live in America and you're afraid of what's going on, and you're hoping that other people like me can change. So today I'm going to dive into my personal story out of MAGA and what prompted it all. I'm Jenny Gage, and this is Life Take Two. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for following along on this journey. And thank you for all of the conversations that we're having in my comments. I don't always get a chance to respond, but when I'm reading through, it's beautiful to see people thinking and people with opposing viewpoint coming together and discussing. Now, this video has no script. I don't even have my normal bullet points in front of me that I like to work off of because I just wanted to kind of organically share my story. Now, this is going to be a two-part video series. Tomorrow, I'll post a carefully researched video where I share tips to help people in your life come off of the MAGA ledge and step away from the cult just a little bit. So stay tuned for that. Today, I just want to share. And it's really important to point out right from the get-go here that I didn't just wake up one day and decide to leave the Republican Party and Donald Trump.
See, I have to just drop this here because she's kind of one of the people that she's going to be like the subject matter expert on how to get MAGA people out of the situation that they're in. Because people who have never been in a MAGA situation don't know what it's like to be in that ethos and get out of it. So
left everything, and it was actually stepping away from my religion and then stepping away from all religion and everything that I had ever known, literally everything. We'll get into that here. That then by default, as a side effect, led me to no longer resonate with Donald Trump, with his ideologies, his policy, and with the MAGA party that had been a huge part of my life as a whole. If you haven't caught some of my other videos, I'll link a couple of them in the description. All I want to say here about my past with MAGA is that it was my entire identity, and I was deeply committed to Donald Trump and to everybody in the Republican Party, to the point that my entire social media page, my Facebook and my Instagram, in my personal life for a long time were just platforms where I could support and promote Donald Trump. I even had Donald Trump as my personal profile picture, and I was constantly writing these little love letter to Trump posts and supporting and promoting him. I was all in. How all in was I? I was as all in as you could possibly be, just short of actually working for Fox News. So first of all, basic background understanding into mind control, high demand religions, and organizations like the Mormon Church and the MAGA Party. Because we live in...
Just like a little Joe Rogan moment. Have you ever heard of MK Ultra? I shouldn't joke.
Such a melting pot of different ideologies. And my neighbor across the street might be a Democrat, and the other one might be a Republican, and somebody else might be a Libertarian. And we might have lesbians and a Catholic priest all like mixed up together. We no longer live in isolated societies where people have very similar ideologies. It's actually really easy to control people when everybody in a tribe believes all the same things.
It's funny how, like, because Canada and the U.S. both kind of prided themselves as being like the melting pot. And I mean, we're just going to exclude the African American piece on that, because I know that they've been excluded a lot from the White Project, as well as the indigenous peoples of Turtle Island. But I guess what I'm saying is, like, aside from that, like, before the internet, and like, because people never used to really, it's really hard to like remember sometimes that, like, back in the day, people never really got like really heated on politics. Never got really divided by politics. People didn't really talk about politics very much. I mean, it didn't paint. There wasn't like wasn't as much division. But now, like, the way that the internet medium kind of works is we just kind of see into each other's heads a little too much sometimes. Not that like it really it's really hard to say. You know, like, if we, again, like I said at the start of the video, like, if we're serious about uniting the people, you're gonna have people with conflicting views. That's just how it works. So we have to make room for differing opinions, but also, you know, I guess that's the concept of like a coalition, because people who are like from a certain background aren't going to fly with like doing certain activities, and so that's like you can have a united group, but you can also have like a coalition. And I don't like, you know, it sucks that it's kind of like a political term now, because it used to be just really organic. The people would just like, you know, they just vibe, but now it's almost kind of like this is just my opinion. I'm just kind of rambling, but kind of like the genie's out of the bottle, and you can't put it back in. But we can learn to see each other as we are, where we are, including ourselves, because like a lot of times we beat ourselves up and say we're not good enough yet. Look at me, I'm doing my first video on YouTube, and you know, I haven't been good enough to do a YouTube video for a really long time. So, you know, I think I lost my train of thought.
The way we do things in America, the way that we're all mixed up like that, means that rather than keeping you inside of that little isolated area, they have to keep your brain controlled. And that's what happened to me. I was born and raised into the Mormon Church, and on my mom's side, we were multi-generational Mormon. So my mom had never known anything but the Mormon Church, and her parents had joined the church quite young, and great-grandparents had joined the church relatively young. So I was born to a family that was deeply devout and really didn't have any outside views. My mom had no idea what it was like to not be a Mormon, and she had been raised very much controlled by her Mormon community. So her number one goal, and the goal of all of my youth leaders and college professors and my grandparents and my huge, big, extended family and all of my neighbors and seminary teachers and everything, was to just keep my little brain in Mormonism. And they did that fairly thoroughly. Mormonism isn't just one of these church on Sunday type of religions where then like maybe you're Catholic and go to church on Sunday, your friends are Lutherans and atheists and whatever. As a Mormon, all of my friends were Mormons.
You're completely isolated.
All my family was Mormon. I was only allowed to date Mormon. I wasn't really allowed to go to friends' birthday parties or slumber party if they weren't Mormon. I lived in a very isolated little Mormon bubble. Mormonism is why I was Christian nationalist right away, because the Book of Mormon teaches that God literally made America as a promised land, and that he only brings people to America who are chosen by him, that this land is preserved for his most righteous children, and that we as members of the church were to fight to preserve this nation as not just a Christian nation, but also as a Mormon nation. So Christian nationalism was just a natural outcropping of my religion, to the point that my family and my community mixed America with the gospel like they were both the same. I believe that the Constitution had been written by the hand of God, just like the commandments that Moses, the tablets that he had brought down from Mount Sinai. I believe that the Constitution had been scripted by God just exactly like that. And just like Moses and his people had been brought out of Egypt across the Red Sea, I believed that Christopher Columbus had been led across the ocean to the new promised land by the hand of God. My community was a...
And that's what I'm saying. Mormonism is essentially a cult, and it is a Christian fascist cult, and there's probably a lot to do with the success of the Republican Party in general, but also Trumpism. And until they get out, they're stuck. They're victims. They're actually victims. It's crazy how victims of a cult are literally scorching the earth, supporting the scorching of the earth. Man.
Obsessed with Boy Scouts of America and Flag Day and the 4th of July. We always had these huge congregational pancake breakfasts on the 4th of July. And there are patriotic songs right in the hymn book, like God Bless America, like the national anthem. They are sacred songs. So all of those things were my absolute reality. Just like I knew that the sun was going to come up in the morning and the sky was blue and the grass was green, I knew that Heavenly Father had created this beautiful land of America, and that Joseph Smith was a true prophet, and the gospel was true, and the Book of Mormon was a real testament of the Indians who had lived here on the American continent. That stuff was my reality. Part of that reality was also being Republican, and that was because the Democrats tended to lean more towards women's lib, which was a sin according to Mormon doctrine, because the traditional family is the foundation of everything, so only Satan would want women to go out and work. We believe that divorce had started because women started to work, because the Democrats were fine with killing babies, and Democrats had been the ones who had legalized gay marriage, which I believe was the greatest abomination on the face of the earth. So for those reasons, the Democratic Party to me was literally a group of Satanists.
All fascist ideas. Every single thing that she just said. Isn't that crazy? It's freaking crazy.
And that stuff might have been my reality forever if my parents had homeschooled me, if maybe I hadn't had TV and the internet, and if I hadn't started working, that's the devil, right? But at home for a multi-level marketing essential oil company that honestly was...
Don't say doTERRA. Please, don't say doTERRA. Please.
One of the big kinks in my MAGA life, and if I hadn't ever been ordered to see a therapist. Again, all of these ideologies about Mormonism and America and Christian nationalism and white supremacy, they were just my reality. I was IQ tested, and 2 days a week I was bussed out to a special school for gifted students. That was a big thing in the 80s and 90s. And this gifted class didn't just teach us memorization and stuff. I spent an entire school day, depending on the school year, between 1 and 2 days a week, learning critical thinking skills and problem solving on a level that I wasn't getting in my normal classroom. I was 8 years old and I learned how to take data and analyze it and draw conclusions, how to form a hypothesis. We learned to research and investigate and draw conclusions even if we didn't have complete data. For example, one of my projects that year when I was 8 years old was about the Titanic, which hadn't been discovered yet. The shipwreck of the Titanic was still buried, who knows where, and we had to go through all of the data of the last communication from the Titanic, where it had been, and then we had to do mathematical formulations around tidal drift and things like that to speculate where the Titanic might be. And then we had to write a newspaper report as though we had discovered the Titanic. We also had to speculate things like decomposition. Would there be any skeletal remains? Would there still be any artifacts if the Titanic had struck the bottom of the sea? Could it be buried? We had to speculate and come up with all of these things. And here's what's funny. My public school education was really at odds with my religious upbringing, because in my religion, I was learning to memorize scriptures. I was learning to memorize the things that the prophets told me. I was learning to memorize the commandments and just obey. In fact, when I was a little girl, we used to sing this song in our Mormon primary class, which is the youth ministry, that goes, "Do as I'm doing, follow, follow me." And you literally follow somebody in doing something. And the reason that part of youth ministry is it's teaching you to follow the prophet. There's another youth ministry song that literally says, "Follow the prophet, follow the prophet, follow the prophet, he knows the way." And you march around the room as a little child as though you're following the prophet, like you're walking behind him. There's another one. "I will go, I will do the things the Lord commands. I know the Lord provides a way, he wants me to obey." Obedience was honestly the only thing that I was getting out of my religious community. And it's the only thing that I would have gotten out of my religious community. And honestly, if my parents had homeschooled me, everything probably would have been fine. But again, my public school education taught me not just to obey and not just to accept the facts in front of me, but to gather data, critically think, and form hypotheses. So at age 8, I was set to be baptized into the Mormon church, and that year we were presented in our youth ministry class with all of the details in the Mormon gospel, including Joseph Smith and the Golden Plate and the Book of Mormon and all of those little juicy nuggets of the gospel. And I can still remember the Sunday that my teacher, Sister Say, presented to us the story of the Book of Mormon and the Golden Plate. And what a miracle it was that God had hidden up these golden records that the Indians had written so that Joseph Smith could find them in the early 1830s, late 1820s.
I forgot about that part.
And I was in this critically thinking class, so I started to critically think about it. And I raised my hand in class. I don't remember everything that I said. But I was really excited by this information. I was literally so excited thinking that Heavenly Father didn't just have the Bible that was 2,000 years old, but that we also had this new scripture. So excited. So I raised my hand with a couple of questions. One of my questions was, where are the gold plates? Are they in a museum? Can I go see them?
That's such a good thing
and
to ask.
And the teacher told me that an angel had taken them up to heaven.
Such a grown-up thing to say.
That really bothered me.
Oh, that sucks.
That would continue to bother me. And I also asked, has anyone independent of Joseph Smith discovered similar record that would support the data? And the teacher was like, I have absolutely no idea. Now, at age 8, that didn't cause me to leave the church. I would be thoroughly brainwashed and indoctrinated into the Mormon religion until I learned to gaslight myself and doubt my doubts in really significant ways. But
isn't that fucking nuts? Gaslighting yourself. And hey, this isn't just a Mormon thing. This is an all kinds of people kind of thing. And just, why do I have these? I don't even need these goddamn headphones. They're not even plugged in. Oh my god. I thought I got a good sleep last night. Oh my god. Yeah. Oh, gaslighting. How about that?
the things that I was learning along the way, how to critically think, would just degrade everything eventually. So I would eventually grow up and get married and become a Mormon trad wifey by the time I was 20 years old, and just live a very Christian nationalist, white supremacist, Mormon trad wifey, alt-right prepper sort of life. Then,
So,
Mormon women aren't supposed to work, trad wives don't work, right? But multi-level marketing jobs,
it's crazy too, because you can't like just because like prepper lifestyle. Yeah, I would say probably most of it is very like bourgeois, and you know, it's kind of like take care of yourself and let the rest of the world burn kind of thing. And I know what exactly. I've been in that mindset for a very long time. And you got to recognize that with prepping, it is all based on fear. Fear that you are powerless to change things, that people are just going to believe what they're going to believe, and there's no point in trying. And I mean, like, there's all kinds of evidence in the world to believe something like that, right? Like, when's the last time that you had a try to have like a discussion or a debate with somebody, and you both left with the same opinions that you came in with? After a while, you just start thinking like, why the frig am I even doing this, right? Like, there's no point. The normies they're gonna be the stupid normies that they've always been, and they're gonna burn this place to the fucking ground. So I am gonna go, and whatever your definition of normie is, because somebody's definition of normie could be just like the Democrats and like the liberals and like whatever, and then like the people in the know, which is funny because that's where the word woke came from. Just means you're awake. It's a hilarious side piece. Not getting into that, but the prepper people are like at a point of like fear and rage, and as soon like it's almost like it's like Thanatos, like that. I don't want to get Freudian shit, but it's like Thanatos, like, you know, like the death drive, where it's just like I'm like so angry with everything that I just want everything to be destroyed. And again, I understand that too, because when you get to a point where you feel like you can't do anything to fix anything and the whole world's gonna burn, you just want to protect yourself. And that's the tendency that's going to ensure that people like Trump stay in power. That is the fuel of fascism. That's the fuel, because once people are at a place of complete desperation where they where they feel like they can't make change, they go to an Ubermensch like Donald Trump to fix everything. And then when he doesn't fix everything and everything burns to the ground, then you're back in despair even worse than you were before. All this to say, not all preppers are Mormons. Maybe all Mormons are preppers. I have no idea, because I'm not a Mormon. I've never been one. But I think we need to be very careful with like saying, like, you know, like, because she's like saying a lot of things right now. And I don't think it's like, you kind of have to approach it very differently. Depending on who they are, where they are. Like, I know people that go to church, they're not Mormons, but they are like prep-ish. They're not really like prepper. But, like, well, they can't be. They're in fucking Canada. It's not like Canadians don't have fucking guns. So, it's way different up here. Way different up here than it is in the States. I digress.
Kind of okay, because you can work from home, and so I started working with a friend who had joined this essential oil multi-level marketing company, and I was selling oils everywhere I could. I was doing classes on my home, and so my friends and neighbors would invite other friends and neighbors to my classes. This broadened my community and my network outside of just my Mormon ward. I started meeting people in my own neighborhood that I had never met before, and people outside of my neighborhood. And suddenly I started having this whole slew of lesbians who signed up for my email.
This is the other thing too. Just be careful. Like, listen to what she's saying. Like, she was in a bubble, under the Mormon milieu. She was part of this MLM thing. Not great, but it exposed her to people of different worlds. So it's just for lack of a better word, and it changed her perspective. I think even if you think that you're in the right position, like, obviously I think I'm in the right position and you probably do too. It's important to just see people where they are and let people challenge you. You challenge other people, you let them challenge you, and that's how we all grow. And you don't have to, like, even if you're like extremely political and you already know like what your political line is, I think a level of openness is required. In fact, if you stay in your house, right, and you build this big like rubric of like this is like the multi-stage method of crushing the imperialist state or whatever it is, right? You will go out there as soon as you get out of your door, your whole thing crumbles apart. So it's important to be dialectical in this way. You have your idea, people have their idea, you synthesize it. And it can be really annoying because like people they drive you nuts.
Hello. I know a lot of people think that my whole life fell apart because of my ex-husband, Jake. That's actually not why. He had no part. None of that had anything to do with me leaving. It was actually my lesbian friends. doTERRA team, like there they were. And they became
He said doTERRA, god damn it!
And for the first time, I saw into the lives and behaviors of the boogeymen. And they were amazing. And then my brain started comparing and doing some critical thinking. And I realized all these lesbians and my essential oil company downline are way nicer and have far better, happier lives than the people that go to church with me on Sunday, people in my family, other people in my community. That realization, I will tell you, put my brain into so many mental gymnastics that I could not possibly control. Then we got the computer in our home, and I had never really had a computer before. And I was really late to getting like a smartphone, and I got on Facebook, and that allowed me to see a peek across the world. And what I realized is that some of the hatred and bigotry that was coming from my community toward other people was completely unwarranted. Literally access to just seeing the world through social media and through the internet. It kind of proved to me that my religious leaders and people in my political party were just liars. But I found...
I'll be right back. I could just let this run, actually.
ways to quell those scares and keep believing the church and stay part of the community. And I just chalked all of those doubts up to Satan anyway, so I didn't really care much about them, but those little seeds had been planted. And then my abusive marriage got so bad that I was ordered to see a therapist. Now, this was something that I had never done before. I believed that the gospel and the scriptures and Heavenly Father, my priesthood leaders, and just my personal prayers had the answers to everything. Jesus was my healer. I didn't need some shrink getting in my head and teaching me weird thoughts that were of the devil, but I was ordered. I had to. So I went and saw a therapist, and that therapist would be one of the big straws that broke the camel's back. Let me tell you specifically how that happened. He taught me how to listen to myself. My therapist didn't ever tell me, like, leave your husband or, like, maybe don't go to your church because it seems like it's harming your life. He just made me look inside for the first time, and he taught me that you're not supposed to feel crappy all the time. That's not Satan testing you. That just means that you have a crappy life. He taught me it's okay to feel happy. In fact, you should feel happy. So it kind of taught me internalized critical thinking, that if something's going on in your life and you're not feeling good, look around and see if you can figure out why your life is so unhappy. Let me give you one example of that. Mormons are obsessed with family dinners. Like, the family that eats together, stays together, and family dinner for us was a big deal because I was crab wife, so we had all this homemade food. We'd often have our family prayer and scripture study. As part of dinner, we wanted everyone together all the time, unless they had sports or a job or something. Our whole entire family sat down for this big family meal every single night for a decade. I was the cook, I was the cleanup crew, I was everything. I really had this religious belief in family dinners. The big deal. One one day my therapist just throws out to me, he says, it seems like we have a lot of conversations around dinner, you being abused during dinner or immediately after dinner by Jake, and you exhibiting a lot of stress around mealtime. Yeah, I'm cooking all this homemade food. We have a bunch of kids, and it's like a bad time of day where everybody's just coming home from school and they have homework, and we're transporting into sports practices right after and things like that. And also, I was married to a dick. So mealtime wasn't particularly enjoyable. Nothing was enjoyable. The only enjoyable thing was just not being around him. Of note, I still have so much trauma around mealtime that my therapist has had to work through that PTSD. And it's only been about a year that I've been able to sit down face to face with my own partner and my teenagers, and especially other strangers at dinner time, either in my own home or at a restaurant, without having PTSD panic attacks that can potentially end me up in an ambulance and in the hospital, because of the abuse that I suffered at mealtime. My family mealtimes growing up were horrible too, and so dinner's not a happy place for me to be, and my therapist just pointed that out one day. And he said, maybe there's another solution to that. Why don't you experiment and see if there's another way to eat meals that makes you a little bit happier? He challenged me to find myself a TV tray. I actually stopped at a garage sale on the way home from therapy that day. They had a 50-cent TV tray that I still have in my dresser that we are going to literally use in my movie. This exact TV tray will be in my movie. I dug it out. This TV tray changed my... So that night, I bought myself a lobster tail with a little side salad. And instead of cooking and eating dinner as a whole family, I had gone to TV dinner. And I sat down at my TV tray in front of my favorite show. And I told everyone, hey, don't bother mommy. You guys do your thing, do my thing. And it was the first meal in decades that I had eaten that I was actually happy. And I started to learn to look inward and see what made me happy. Therapy did that.
Wow. Yeah, I think I got most of that while I was gone. That is insane. You imagine, like, just the act of having supper with your kids put you in a panic attack. That's nuts. That's insane. Like, you remember like 15 years ago when people were like, I don't understand the people in PTSD. Nobody ever went to war. That's not how it works. Not even close. In fact, you could go to, if you had a supportive family growing up, supportive network, there's a chance that you can go to war and come back and not have shell shock. I don't know what the percentage is on that, but Gabor Mate talks about it, and he's a really good resource on these things. Fun fact.
Therapy, being taught to look inward, would eventually corrode my belief in the Mormon Church, Christian nationalism, white supremacy, Donald Trump, MAGA, and everything else that I stood for. It would completely unravel my entire identity. It wasn't very long after that, maybe 2 years later, that one day I went to my Mormon church like I always did, and I believed in the church. I didn't have any doubts. And I was sitting in the women's group. It's called Relief Society. It's the third hour of church, just surrounded by women. And the lesson that day was on the evils of homosexuality. I had fought against gay marriage. I had always believed that gay people were the worst people in the world. But now I had these lesbian friends, and they were the nicest people in the world. And I looked inside and I realized, oh my God, this is making me feel terrible. Like, I don't want to sit here and listen to this for an hour. So 10 minutes in, I left the Mormon church.
Wow. Shout out to the L's and the LGBT, what?
I was 44 years old. I had been a faithful, believing member from birth. I left the Mormon church and I have never been back. 2 weeks later, I caught my Mormon returned missionary husband of 24 years picking up the very last 19-year-old escort that he would ever cheat on me with. I'll link an article in the description from my Substack where I talk about how I had to stay with him for 3 years after I discovered a double life, because I was a trad wife and I couldn't go anywhere, and I was still a trad wife and I had no money of my own. I had no job, I had nothing. But that night, when I discovered everything and this all went down, I looked inside and I asked myself, how is this making you feel? And I remember looking him in the face that one last time and realizing, I actually hate this man. I don't want to be with him. He doesn't deserve to be my husband. And so when I found him in bed that night, I snapped my fingers and woke him up and said, a man who does this to me doesn't ever deserve to sleep in bed beside me again. So you can stay the night, and tomorrow morning, our marriage is over. I'm filing for divorce. Therapy. A week after I left the Mormon church, I went to a Christian church, and I became a hardcore Christian for the next 4.5 years. My theory was the Book of Mormon and Joseph Smith had just kept me from knowing Jesus and having a relationship with him, and so I threw myself as deeply into Christianity as I had Mormonism. But unfortunately, with therapy and with critical thinking skills, I had started to really analyze the Bible, and I had started to pay attention to how I felt when I read it. And I started to realize that as I was reading the scriptures to my children, and not just the Old Testament, but also the New Testament, and basically going to church with my children, that it made me feel like crap. I just didn't like the Bible. It was hateful, it was judgmental, it was misogynistic and racist.
Wait a minute.
And
Is she talking about the Mormon Testament, or is she talking about like the Old and New Testament? Because that's a different. Well, she did say she was going. She left the Mormon church to go to a Christian one. So,
really horrifying. And outside of some of the philosophies of Yeshua that are.
Of course, she's got PTSD. Hey. No. There is definitely hateful stuff in the Bible, for sure. Full stop. I'm just gonna stop.
Relatively refreshing. The Bible was not something that I wanted to consume anymore. And church wasn't resonating with me. But here's the straw that broke the camel's back, and this is really important because a lot of people on my channel think that I became atheist because of the Mormon church. Like, the Mormon church destroyed
That's what I was just gonna say.
my relationship with God. No, the Christian church did that. I was devoutly Christian for 4.5 years, and my participation in Christianity and actually reading the Bible multiple times during that era were why I broke up with Jesus.
I broke up with Jesus. It's comical though. I wonder what denomination she was under. Not that it really matters, because again, like I said at the start of the video, this is why I'm really trying to be compassionate about Christians that are complete fucking assholes. You know what I'm saying? Because you've met those people. But Christianity, in the aggregate of things, has brutalized more people than like a lot of things. Look at the history of First Nations people in North America. The residential schools, all of it. In fact, actually, I'm reading a book. It's called The Prison of Grass, and it talks about a Métis, which is basically a French word for like mix. So it's like a mix of like a settler and First Nations people, offspring. That that was his experience, but because of the tone of his skin, he basically was perceived as First Nations, not settler white. Anyways.
It's one of the straws that broke the camel's back. In our congregation, we had a deaf interpreter, and she stood at the front of the church. And one day we sat right behind this row of deaf people that were watching her intently during the church service. And afterwards, she sat down next to this group of people. It was a woman and some small children. And I had never met the interpreter before, so I just said hello. So she introduced herself to us and then introduced us to her wife. They were a lesbian couple. And they were also special needs foster parents, so all of the children sitting on the row with them were foster children, some of whom they had adopted. And it was so refreshing to me to see lesbians in church, because Mormons don't do that. I asked if she had a Bible study group and invited her to come to our Bible study group. And she said that she would in 2 weeks. So the next week I went to the teacher that I knew was going to be instructing the following week's Bible study. And I just told them after class, I said, hey, I've invited a new couple. They've never been before. And I want to make sure that they feel really welcome. And also they're lesbians. So let's just make sure that we're really kind and embracing, because I know that that can be challenging sometimes to feel accepted in church. And this Bible study instructor said, well, if they're lesbians, then I'm probably going to have to really warn them about what God says in the Bible about lesbianism, because it's our duty as Christians to make sure that they are warned. I don't want them to commit sin. But that's actually so hard for me to talk about.
Aww.
This moment right here is actually when I left Christianity. I burned my Bible, I think the next week, and I left religion behind forever. This conversation right here, this man, he looked so nice. And I had known him for a while. We'd gone to this church for a few years. And to hear the hateful things coming out of his mouth, and then to see him flip through this book and read all of these scriptures to me, was so jarring. But I just wanted to invite the lesbian translator from the church to come to a Bible study group, right? And I'm like, you know that she is officially the sign language translator for the church. He's like, yes, I know that, but that doesn't mean that the church is okay with lesbianism. And as I talked to other pastors and other people in the church, I realized that, yeah, they were fine with her being there to sign on Sundays, but they also believed that she was a sinner and that she was going to hell. And I'm sitting there in that class just thinking of all of these special needs foster kids that they were sheltering and nurturing and providing lives for. And I knew that what this church, what the Bible, what Christians were teaching about homosexuality was just wrong. A few weeks later,
Fucking saints.
members of this Christian congregation would also treat myself and my family and my teenage son in really cruel, horrible ways.
Yeah.
And when I stepped away from the group, I had people going out of their way to attack me for stepping away from Christianity. Like literal face-to-face conversations with people that I ran to around town, because I live in a relatively small town, about how I was literally going to hell and taking my kids with. I started to really pay attention during that time span to where I felt peace and where I saw people who were emotionally healthy, who were kind and supportive and empathetic, who were exhibiting behaviors that reflected the values that I felt were important. And then not long after that, we came into this like pre-campaign era in the presidential race. And I turned on my Fox News like I always had, and I started listening to Donald Trump, and I still got a bunch of MAGA newsletters and emails and things like that. And I started really reading them because, yeah, the church isn't true, and I wasn't married anymore, and my whole life had turned upside down. And I was no longer Christian, and the Bible, and like, am I going to see my grandma when I die? Like, I was plunged into this nihilistic void and had such a loss of identity, but I was still rooted in the Republican Party, right? Like, we were the good guys. And then I started reading the newsletters and stuff, and it's like, oh my God, this isn't the person that I want to be. This is certainly the person that I used to be, but I can't vote for Donald Trump. I don't know if any of you guys have ever had like that boyfriend that you were in love with, or somebody that was like a role model to you, and then it turns out that they're a creep. Like for me, my childhood, Bill Cosby was a really big deal because I grew up with the Huxtables, and when it turned out that he had been such an abuser of women, that was really hard for me to grapple with, to see that role model fall from grace. That is how I felt about the Republican Party, and especially about Donald Trump. And I think in a lot of ways it was so hard for me because then I had to look at myself and realize, oh my God, I was one of these people until like literally like 10 minutes ago. And no, I'm not. So who am I? And what do I even do? In a lot of ways, leaving MAGA, I can't even talk, and leaving the Republican Party was harder than the end of my 24-year marriage, and realizing that my ex-husband had this double life and that he was a jerk, and that I hadn't even like known half of the stuff that was going on behind the scenes. And then like, well, now what, am I just going to be alone for the rest of my life because it's really hard to picture a future outside of who you've been and who you've been with. And obviously, we don't have a crystal ball, so stepping away from the Republican Party was terrifying to me, because then it's like, but the Democrats, they're on the wrong side of everything, right? I had always believed that they were the evil people. They were murdering babies. So I was kind of like, maybe I'm just going to be nothing.
Keep digging, girly. Keep digging. Keep digging. It gets worse. It gets worse.
Started volunteering for the RFK campaign for a little bit, because that was kind of a neutral ground for me. But then, I don't know, he wasn't going to win, and his stuff was just getting wilder and wilder. And so what I did one day was I just sat down with the computer. I had a couple of hours, and I started looking at the actual platforms of the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. And I realized, first of all, I don't care about parties, and I don't care that much about nationalism, patriotism, things like that, because at this point in my life, I'm so concerned about just other humans that being American or Chinese or Mexican or whatever mean very little to me. I feel like political parties are just a means to an end so that we can have cohesive civilizations with some sort of rules. I always say that I'm an anarchist, and I mean that deeply. If an
Yes!
tomorrow only a few of us remained and we returned to just tribalism.
Yes! Did you hear what the fuck she just said? She's gonna be an anarchist now! I'm sure she probably means that in terms of like libertarian. I hope not. She come on board. Be a libertarian socialist. Fuck it. Do it. Do it.
That'd be.
Hey, you know what? Like, the fact that she said that, and like she's kind of going towards the Democratic Party, she's got a chance. Who knows? You imagine? Like, Trad Blake turned into like not a communist, but like a far left socialist. You imagine that? That'd be insane.
Fine with me. Anyway, as I started to read through what the Democratic Party stood for, I realized this stuff aligns a lot with me, and I really don't support unfettered capitalism either. It's not just political parties. I didn't align with the Republican economically. I don't believe in trickle-down economics. All the data shows that it caused a lot of problems for us. That was really a hard reckoning too, because I had a lot of money. We had been business owners, and I had been really opposed to any type of social systems. I always thought, my husband works really hard for our money. Why does he have to pay taxes to pay for some loser who's too lazy to go out and get a job? That's on them. But I'm a different person now. So the presidential election happens, and I go into a booth and vote for Kamala Harris, a mixed-race female Democrat who supports abortion and gay rights. It was so wild. Like, I had this out-of-body experience.
I bet you
And
did.
in the summer, that town hall happened, and I just told Kevin, I just want to go. I want to see what this is all about. I feel like I really align with the Democratic Party. And I love Gabby Giffords. She was actually shot just a couple miles away from where I'm sitting right now, and that was a tragedy that impacted our entire community. And I went to that town hall, and I have never felt more aligned with a group of people in my entire life. And not because somebody told me that I should be, and that's what I'm supposed to believe in, but adult me, my 51-year-old self, who has critically thought and had therapy and listened to my own inner voice and knows the things that I value. What I found in that town hall that night was a group of other people who value the same things that I value. I know this video was long and full of tears.
Imagine the
I
courage.
just wanted to point out a couple of the challenges that I faced in transitioning my political identity. First of all, I have been raised in a system where there's always charismatic leaders that are extremely strong, and it was really confusing being in this last election and seeing that the Democratic Party is completely unraveling, and Joe Biden was so old that there wasn't a snowball's chance in hell that I wanted to vote for him. I actually considered moving to Canada or Mexico and just taking my kids and my family away. I carefully researched other nations across the world that might be a better fit for us, but I have a grandbaby and I have so many people that I love here. And I think that the lack of strong leadership has been the greatest challenge for me. By the way, Gavin Newsom, if you're watching, please respond to the emails that I've sent you. I've talked to a bunch of other senators since I last said that on my last video. Newsom, I would like to volunteer my services as an influencer and as somebody who has keen insight into the MAGA party and Christian nationalism and Mormonism to you.
What did I say before earlier?
So reach out, I am volunteering. I think the second greatest challenge has been just being the enemy to all of the people that were formerly my community. My entire family has shunned me. I have almost no remaining friends because those who were Mormon didn't want me in their life because I'm an apostate, and those who were MAGA and preppers and Christian nationalists and all of that obviously no longer want me in their life because I'm a Benedict Arnold. I am a woke, liberal, feminist, atheist who talks...
A Benedict Arnold? What is that? Benedict Arnold was an American-born British military officer who served during the American Revolutionary War. He fought with distinction for the American Continental Army and rose to the rank of major before defecting to the British. Oh. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I guess.
About everything online. So I've lost all of my community, and that's been an extreme challenge. The third scariest thing about all of this has been realizing that my former party is now in charge of the country, and that has caused me so much anxiety. And it's one of the things, honestly, that prompts me to use my voice online every day like I do. Like, I left the Republican Party, I left MAGA, I left Christian nationalism and all of that, and now they're the guys in charge, and I know them intimately from the inside out. I have firsthand experience into how their twisted little brains work and the hatred that prompts everything that they do, and it terrifies me to see what's happened just in the first little bit of Donald Trump's presidency. It's not like I left MAGA behind and became a Democrat, and now we have, like Barack Obama or somebody in charge.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
I'm scared. I'm scared because I know them.
You know what
and
they're
I know
like.
them because I was them. I guess I should share some benefits. The first one is just that feeling of authenticity that I have. Like, I'm aligned with my core. I'm not just following the prophet. I'm not just following my group around me. I'm living the most aligned and congruous life that I've ever lived before. And if I had to wait until age 49 to do that,
that's fine.
Worth it. Because I think that some people go their whole lives without actually living authentically. And in addition to the authenticity, I have so much peace and connection and love for the people around me that I never had before. My life is no longer based on hate and fear. And now that I'm no longer in a community that's based on hate and fear, I truly have the best relationships that I've ever had in my entire life. My partner, Kevin, is absolutely incredible. We've been together for almost 6.5 years now. And while I have a very small circle of friends, the friends that I do have are some of the kindest, most amazing, most purpose-driven people that I've ever had in my entire life. And thankfully, I am rebuilding my own personal identity bit by bit. And I have to say that I'm actually happy with who I am now. Lastly, I took in a lot of people who still say that I look like I could be on Fox News, and why do I still look like the Mormon girl in MAGA? That's how I'm comfortable, and it wouldn't be authentic if I dyed my hair purple, or I did a nose ring for a while. It didn't work. I might tattoo my hands here coming up soon. I just don't have the money. Maybe if my whole life take two had happened.
You don't have to. Fuck that shit. Fuck that shit. There's no fucking aesthetic here. Just fucking do you. Fucking no. Unless you actually want one, then only then should you do it. But don't feel like you have to placate. You don't have to do that at all. You can be accepted in the group just by being you. Then I would still look so MAGA Mormon-y. But you guys, I'm 51. I don't really want to change my whole appearance. And I am blonde. I am Scandinavian, German, British. This is just who I am. I want to end with this final thought. In my Life Take Two podcast, when I have Good Blonde to interview, I ask them if
you of today could go back to 19-year-old you and tell that person anything, what would you tell them? And I wish that 51-year-old Jenny could go back to 19-year-old Jenny and just tell her, use those critical thinking skills and look inside and see how things are making you feel. That's the key to everything. That day that I left the Mormon church, I stood there in the hallway after I left that class, and I thought to myself, if this was the first time that I'd ever come to this church and I didn't have 44 years invested in it, would I want to come a second week? And the answer was no. I wish that 19-year-old me had been able to assess the things around me and really see the impact that they were having on myself and others, because it would have changed the course of my life completely. And I want to end this with a call to action for anybody who's still listening. Having been part of this movement, I know that these people will stop at nothing to fulfill their purposes. They believe that God is on their side, and they create power in ways that most people would never even dream of. We have to fight. We have to fight at the polls. It's time for good people to decide to run for office. We need an army of politicians ready to step into public service. If you're not ready to do that, start financially supporting good politicians around. Even contributing just a little bit of money to campaigns can help. Speak up, speak out, do all that you can. We have to get power away from these people, or we are literally stepping into the handmaid's tale. That was my personal fantasy as a Mormon. I wanted an American theocracy, and I saw that potentially happening with Mitt Romney, and then it didn't. All right, that's it. Let me take a drink from water and take a nap. I will be cruising through the comments a little bit in this one. Thank you for watching. Bye, guys.
Life take two. I don't know your name. She's right. Obviously, I didn't see the second half of this video. I saw the first half was good enough to do a replay, do a review. Yeah, we have to fight these people. She said it herself. I wonder if did she put her follow-up video up yet? It doesn't look like she did. This was 2 months ago. Well, I wonder if that was 1 day ago. Well, there seems to be a lot of content here. Good for her. Yeah. Yeah. And the people who criticize Antifa have no idea. Because if hateful speech, you just can't let that run rampant. It's dangerous. The idea of like the free marketplace of ideas is liberalism's kryptonite. And fascism is super effective against liberalism. Maybe I can explain that sometime. But the reason why is because fascism, when they argue, they don't care if they're right or wrong. They just care about what they believe, and they care about spreading it. It's the same with the Bible, you know? They're following orders. This is what they were supposed to believe. This is what you're supposed to believe. And so the free marketplace of ideas gets distorted in this scenario. Not saying that we should resort to violence. Obviously, the better approach would be what she's doing. She's doing Antifa work now. Okay? What she's doing now, that is anti-fascism. It's not people dressed in black with a mask on, smashing a brick through a fucking window. This woman right here, She is a proud anti-fascist. She is against fascism. If you are against fascism, then you are an anti-fascist. Period. Period. I think this video is probably long enough, so I'm just gonna close with the question that she posed, since it would only be fair that I'm replaying her video. If you could go back to your 19-year-old self, what would you say? I would say you're on the right track, but don't give in to hate. People are going to step on you, people are going to put you down, people are going to throw you away, but keep kindness in your heart, be kind to people, and that's it. You don't need to convert people into coming together and fighting something. Be kind, be good, be giving. Find a way to have all of your values and your strategy and your tactics all put out on the table. Just be kind, let the rest handle itself, and keep doing your thing. You know things are screwed up. You've known things are screwed up for a really long time. You're on the right track. Don't give in to crazy shit. And I'm sorry, but you're going to run into people who are supposed to be on your side and they won't be. But freedom for all is what needs to happen. Don't run away from that. Don't fall into fear and hate and retreat. That's what I would say. So with that, I'm gonna wrap this up, and I hope that the video and audio are okay. So if you are still here, thank you so much. This is the pilot. I didn't really know what the pilot was going to be, just whatever came up at the time. I love you all, and stay safe, stay hydrated. This has been Kyle at the Region, and I'm gonna take the rest of the day off. Bye.